Hopefully this will. Good morning, fabulous people. I am Tiffany Fox with Mrs. T Fox Resources. If you have not been with me before, can you just raise your hand? Give me a hand. Has everybody been with me that I can see? Oh my gosh, fabulous repeat customers of my art world here. I am just so glad that you're here. It's Saturday morning. We are snowed under here in South Carolina. We got like 3/4 of an inch and everybody's having a fit. So, but the sun just came out. So that's our snow shovel. It's all going to be gone in like 5 minutes. So it's all good. We are talking about acrylic mixing. So this is going to be fast and it's going to be fun. And I'm just going to do a demo. And I'm just going to talk to you about how to keep your kids from wasting paint. My gosh, is this the thing that just drives all of us crazy? And I know when I was in the classroom, the thing that drove me mad was the thought of spending my money, my fee money on all of this paint. And then I just felt like it was either all getting dried up or all getting washed down the sink or both. And it just really made me nuts. So when I started creating resources for art educators, which is what I do now full time, painting, drawing, advanced art, AP art and design, all the things, I wanted to make sure that I gave you the information that was so helpful to me. And that information today is going to be how to help your kids mix nice, clean, beautiful hues without wasting paint. So my focus today centers on a resource that I came up with. It's called Acrylic Mixing Basics. I'm going to share my screen really quick and I'm going to show you where you can find it and all of my resources if you think you want to find it. Okay, if not, that's great. I'm glad you're here. We'll talk about mixing, but let me share my screen super quick and I am just going to show you where to find it. So here's where you can find it at mrstfoxresources.com. And this is a newly revamped website. It's very, very clean. It's very easy to use. I am not someone who likes to fumble around on a website if I'm trying to find something. So I wanted it to be nice and clean. I offer two kinds of resources. I offer resources for your classroom that you can unpack, roll out with little to no prep and lots of support. That's my resources for you in the classroom. I also offer courses, online pre-recorded courses on what's known as my Thinkific site. All right, this is an online course. You can do professional development in your jammies with your coffee anytime you want. Each one of these recorded sessions, these are live workshops similar to the one you're in right now, but they're usually an hour to 2 hours long. And these come with classroom resources. So like the consistent classroom comes with resources that you can take right back and plug in and take the information that you've learned and use it in your classroom. Very unlike the PD that most of us have to sit through, which is on stuff that is not relatable to us and makes no sense. So this is why I came up with this. You can do everything from classroom management to drawing to painting. If you're new in the classroom, if you're teaching out of subject, all the things, I'm trying to create resources that you can use. So these are courses that you can take. You have unlimited access to these classes. Like if you decide you want to buy a course from me, you don't end up with like 30 days to watch it and download. You have the course indefinitely. You can sign back into Thinkific anytime. So I just wanted to show you that. And then I wanted to show you the TPT shop. Okay, so if you're not familiar with TPT or you've never been on TPT and you see me out in the online space on Instagram, on Facebook, whatever, and you're like, where do I find this chick's stuff? If I haven't posted a link, this is where you find this chick's stuff right here on TPT. What people don't usually do is scroll down here to all of the categories. And if you scroll to the categories, that's when you can get really precise. Like today, we're talking about painting. So this is all the painting stuff all in one place. There's some classroom management in here and some baselines thrown in. But anyway, this is where you find it. And from my website, you can also find it up here at the top. So if you go like this and drop down the resources, you can just go down here if you want to know something about graphite pencil. That's going to take you right to the category in my shop that has all of the pencil lessons. So anyway, enough about that. I just wanted to let you know that that's where everything is. And so at this point, I'm going to switch to my document camera and I'm just going to start painting. And I'm just going to talk. This is not going to take that long. I'm going to talk through the process of actually having them. How much paint do they squirt out? How do they mix the hue, the tone, the shade, you know, all that stuff. We're going to do a chromatic black and we're also going to do a chromatic gray. So I'm going to switch to my dot cam. You guys get to watch all of my lovely tech smoothness. If you've been on a Zoom call with someone who's like super smooth at the tech, so I'm sorry. I'm just going to apologize right now. Okay, so here is my dot cam. And I am using today, this is what I'm using today. I'm going to be using Blick Studio acrylics, the primary yellow, the Cad Red Deep. I'm going to be using the cerulean blue hue and the titanium white because I'm mixing the secondaries. Let me get this so you can see it better. I'm going to mix the secondaries. Let me turn this off. All right. So this is what we're doing today. This will not take us long, but hopefully when you are finished, you will have the gist of it. This QR code is for this lesson, the one that this is kind of based off of. So this is very basic mixing for your kids. I actually print these on cardstock two-sided and it works beautifully. There's a presentation with the resource. There are notes for the kids to take. There are even notes that are already filled in for your kiddos that have accommodations because we want to make sure everybody is served in the art room. So I try to give you everything you need in all the resources. All right, let's do some painting. This is a plate that I just took out of my cabinet because I didn't have any more disposable plates. So, you'll know how it is if you're an artist. Everything is fair game when they squirt the paint out on their palette. Now, my guys used, they used disposable hefty plates and we washed and rewashed and rewashed. So this was their little kit that they got at the beginning of the unit. But what I would tell them, and then of course this is if they have unused paint before the next class, they would put a clean plate on top, seal up their bag, and then they are ready to go. But a lot of times I think kids waste paint because we forget to tell them the basics. And this is one of the basics that really helped once I showed them. No bigger than a nickel. And I would even put a nickel right here on the palette to show them because they don't use cash anymore. They're not like us with the whole cash thing. And I would say, that's all the paint you need. You can always get more paint. I'm not going to, be a paint ration person, but I am going to make sure that we don't waste precious resources. And paint is a precious resource. And I used to think to myself, gosh, why are they squirting so much paint out? And then finally I thought, well, you didn't tell them how much paint to squirt out. So maybe that's why. Okie dokie. Let me move if y'all would see this in my office, you would laugh. I have like a candle with my little dot cam propped up on it because I want you to be able to see everything. Okie dokie. Okay, orange is our first one. This is the deal with mixing so that kids don't waste paint. They need to have their fresh colors on the outside, and then they need to come in somewhere to the center. These paints, the reds are very powerful, so they don't need a lot of paint to make that orange. I show them how to load a brush back and forth. I show them how to scoop toward the center. If they spread the paint out all over the plate, it's going to dry quickly. Acrylic paint dries fast. Here's our orange. We also do a lot of, let me get this color wheel real quick so I can show you. Everybody gets a color wheel at the beginning of the unit. If you only have one unit of painting, if you only have time to teach one unit, this is a great lesson, this acrylic mixing, and then they always do the disco ball in my Art 1 class. But when I put this color wheel down, they'll know if it's orange. Because you guys know how when they start mixing and they go, hey, is this orange? Is this orange? Is this a good orange? I nipped that in the bud by giving everybody a color wheel, and I even laminate them, and then I let them test out the paint on the color wheel. So it's really helpful for them. And if we can help them think more and ask us less questions, our sanity will be preserved. We all know how that is. We also don't want them to have too much paint on the end of their brush. You know how they get in there and they do this and they have all the paint on the brush and then there's like no control for them? We don't want that. Now we're going to need enough paint to paint all 3 of these squares, and I don't think we have enough. I talked to them also about how much paint do you really need to mix? If you're only painting 3 squares, you don't need a gigantic pile of paint because you're not going to need it. And then again, that's wasting paint. We don't want to waste paint. That's what we're avoiding. I'm going to scrape this off. I'm going to scoop it back in. I only have my paint on the tip of my brush. And I'm always going to paint my hue first. Now, I'm a stickler, guys, about when they do their value scales and they do their mixing. I like to have it as neat as possible because the sooner they learn to control the paint and move the brush, the easier it's going to be when you get to the impossible shape and the vector and all those things that come after it in the scaffold. Okay, and here's a shameless plug for my other YouTube video teaching painting using the scaffolded approach. That's the one that you might want to watch if you're interested in the whole scaffold. Okay, here's my orange. I'm going to take my white. Now, what they want to do is they want to dump the white into the whole pile. It's a ratio. If they want to get to a super light orange, they're going to put the white next to it, and they're just really, I'm only using what's on my brush. That's coming off my brush and into this tint. So I'm saving this part. You guys know why I'm saving it. It's going to end up being their shade. So here's my tint. I didn't have to mix any more orange. Here's my tint. They want to make sure it's nice and even. On the rubric, there's a rubric with this. It talks about nice, even mixing without streakiness. Okay, so there's my hue and there's my tint. So now I have to do my shade. We don't use black in my classroom, so we use the complement, which the complement of orange is blue. They don't need, again, it's all about ratios. They don't need a lot of this. They also don't want to take their brush that has this paint and try to mix their tone. This is something else that they often do, their shade. I use those interchangeably because we don't use black. They're going to need to clean that brush after this process. With the resource you get 2 video tutorials where I literally walk them through talking about exactly how to do this. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm not going to remember all this, or a painting's not my background, there's a video tutorial with that resource. I am using the smallest amount of blue possible. There's hardly any blue on my brush because I only need a darker version of my orange. If I get too much, man, it is going to be great. And you can always add more. This is just like getting the paint out of the tube. It's not going to be the prettiest thing you ever saw, but it is going to be a darker orange. And they'll be like, why do I need this color? And I'm like, well, maybe you're painting a pumpkin. Maybe you are painting oranges and you need the darker value. We just need a darker version of our original color, but we don't want it to be icky and gray. And look how much paint we've used. Hardly any paint we have used. And if we can get them in the mindset, this is just a habit. This is a studio habit. If you can get them mixing in this way, your paint is going to last so much longer. People are always like, oh, I can't afford the expensive paint. No, you can't afford to waste paint. That's the thing you can't afford. All right, so there's my my hue and my shade and my tint. I'm going to clean my brush. We're going to do our green. When they clean that brush in the water, make sure they dry it off on their paper towel really good. Sponges also work. I'm going to try to get this here so you guys can see it. So again, I'm coming out here, I'm coming out in the plate, in the center, going to mix myself a green. On the very first worksheet, where is it? Let me see if I can show you guys something here. The very first worksheet, they're taking all of the warms and the cools, and they're doing alternating combinations of it. And then when they get to this part, they're just going to choose the combo that they like the best. That's a question I often get. Well, people are like, well, gosh, which paint do they use? Which warm, which yellow? Do they use the warm or do they use the cool? They're going to use whichever combo they like. So we're going to check it. We're going to make sure it's green. And we're going to make sure it's not blue green. We're going to make sure it's not yellow green. Let's mix a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And if you don't teach painting or that's not your strong suit, by all means, use a resource where the kids can watch a tutorial, because then the pressure is off. If I was a science teacher, I would definitely need to buy a book because I know nothing about science. Well, I know a little bit, but not enough to teach it. So it's okay. You have families at home and things that you need to do. And whether it's my resource, I mean, I think my resources are pretty cool, but even if it's somebody else's, I strongly encourage you to save yourself the time, because the learning curve to make the video, to make the resources, it's very time consuming. All right, I'm coming into half of my green. We're gonna mix, really with just what's in our, here's the other thing. They don't want to put the white like into their, not only will they contaminate the part they need for the shade, but if they don't get light enough quick enough, and they won't if they put it into the whole mix, they're going to keep putting white in it, and they're going to put more white and more white and more white, and then they're going to end up with a gigantic pile of mint green paint, and and then they're not going to use it for anything else, and then it's going to dry. So here's that wasted paint that I'm talking about. So annoying. The wasted paint. All right, there's my tint. And then we have, turn this around so you can see, but we need red, because that is the complement. So the red's going to help that green get darker. I'm drying off my brush. Going to just put a little bit of red out here. And this, you don't want to get in that tint, or you're going to have a milky, I think I'm going to be like right on the edge of having enough paint for my square here. But the good news is we have not wasted any. And then we're going to paint our square. I'm like super on the edge of not having enough paint. We're going to see what we can do here. So if they need to make like a pine green, this is their combo for putting that warm red in this combination. Here's the cool part. When they do exercises like this, they familiarize themselves not only with the colors, but with the technique. This is where we make our mistakes. This is where we learn. This is where we grow as a painter, from those very first experimental stages of what exactly can I expect when I mix these colors together. This is by far, my kids always said to me, this is by far the most helpful exercise, because it builds their confidence and it builds their artistic skill for them to go in and do anything that you set before them. Like if you guys are on my Instagram at Mrs. T Fox Resources and you see those automobile paintings, or you see other people painting the acrylic automobile, and you're like, oh my gosh, why can't, my kids could never do this. Yes, they could, but you have to grow them to the level so they can do it. You can't, if you pop in there and just do it right off the cuff, what's going to happen is you're going to have 2 or 3 talented kids knock it out of the park. Everybody else is going to limp along to the finish line with a bunch of wasted paint and a bunch of discouragement. And then you'll even have the kids destroying the paint, destroying the brushes, destroying the palettes, whatever, what have you, because they're frustrated. That's why kids act out. They act out because they're frustrated, they're embarrassed, they're scared. Okay, I should be quiet and keep mixing because I'm trying. Now these reds and blues make a powerful, powerful, powerful dark purple. So when I teach this, when we do the violets and we do the value scales, I have them mix the violet. See how dark that is? Instead of trying to tone it, what we do is we use that original hue for the shade. If you put yellow in that, it's only going to get brown real fast. Look how dark that is. And then we take our purple, we take our white and we make it's kind of like a little convoluted, but it works. We're going to make our hue. It's going to have a little white in it, I know, but at least it's not going to be so dark that they can't even see it. Can't see the progression. And then this is sort of like, getting to the end with a little different approach. And then we're going to add more white. I've seen kids paint this entire set of worksheets with just this little tiny bit of paint. They save it for the next class. This stuff dries darker too. So you want to make sure that you have that original mix where you want it. Like they'll think that their tint is light enough. And then that's why I give them this at the top so they can kind of gauge how dark it needs to be. And then there is our tint right there of our violet. So there's our 3 secondaries. We're going to go over here and make our chromatic black and our chromatic gray. Now for chromatic black, we're going to need ultramarine blue. Let me give you guys the secret to chromatic black. I don't buy black paint, never did buy black paint. You want to see some really confident students? Wait till they mix a chromatic black and tell everybody, like when you see those automobile paintings, when you see those master studies that the kids did on my Instagram and on my Facebook, even on my website, there's a student work page, no black paint. And you've never seen a kid more proud than when somebody says, whoa, man, your painting's awesome. And they go, yeah, I didn't even use black. So we want to offer them these experiences. So what I'm making here with this ultramarine and this cad red deep is a super, super, super dark blue violet. This is the secret. I love watching kids do this too, because they're just like, whoa, that's cool, Fox. I'm like, yes, I know. And you don't have, think about how many tubes of black paint you don't have to buy. I'm gonna be saving y'all big bucks here. Send me an email and say, oh, I had money to buy expensive colored pencils because I saved. Oh yeah, guys, I have a whole line of colored pencil stuff too. That's like my favorite thing. Okay, enough talking. Okay, super, super dark blue, violet, super dark, super dark, super dark. And then just a little tiny bit of warm yellow. And when I say a little tiny bit, I mean like that little tiny bit. What that's going to do is that's going to tone it down just enough. Let me show you what happens if you put too much. Don't put too much or it starts to get icky, but you can bring it back. Okay, see how it's icky? It's like icky nasty. Just going to need a little more blue in there. And a little more red in there to bring it back. And it's going to dry darker. Okay, let's see if we got it. I think we got it. So beautiful. Oh my gosh. So gorgeous. And this, guys, is how, you know, we want to build confidence in these artists. We want them to come into our class and say, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to see what I'm going to do today because Fox believes in me. There we go. Now it's going to dry darker. So now see for the chromatic gray, we've done the violet and the yellow. And so now we're going to come out here with the white. We're going to bring the white out here. And really with what's in my brush, we're going to get that gray. Here's another thing I love, that when they do that automobile painting and they mix the grays like this, it is just wonderful to see the results. Lots of times when they're mixing these grays, they will look like they're too purple. Depending on the lighting, this might look purple to you. I'm going to add a little tiny bit, this is what I say to them, add a little bit of yellow. And let's see if we can push the neutral. We call it pushing and pulling colors in my, and see, look, this is a little bit more of a neutralized. So this is closer to that gray that we're after. And then if they put a little bit of white on the edge of the mix, they don't want to put it in the mix because they won't get as light as quickly. It's about ratios. Then we can get an even lighter gray. So all the way, look, we have hardly used any paint at all. And we've pretty much painted the secondaries, the black, the gray. They've done a little bit of experimenting. They still have all this paint left. So they could wipe this away, or they could take a palette knife and scoop this onto a fresh plate and wash the other plate. But we haven't wasted paint. The wasting the paint is what we want to avoid. So one more time, if you guys are interested in, oh my gosh, what did I do? I just hit something. Let me get I think I obviously have too much stuff on my desk here. See, I told you guys it was going to be, I told you it was going to be clunky. Here we go. All right, we're back. So if you're interested in just acrylic mixing basics, this is a great resource. It's also a great resource for you because it's compact. It's very cost effective. All you do is print it on cardstock. Your rubric is at the bottom and they could either grade themselves. It's really, really easy. The components of the rubric are, do they have the correct hues? Are their colors clean? Do they have tints? Do they have shades? Do they have good craftsmanship? And have they been all in on the process? So if you're interested in that, that's the QR code for that. Otherwise, check me out at mrstfoxresources.com. If you want to know about future things like this that I'm doing, whether it's a paid workshop with resources or whether it's free event, please get on my email list because those are the first people that I tell. This booked up in like 24 hours. So if it's something that you think you want to be in the know, even if you're, maybe you're not available, but you would be among the first to know, get on my email list at mrstfoxresources.com. And thanks for joining me. You guys are wonderful. And let me switch back so I can wave goodbye to you. Okay. Have a fabulous rest of your weekend. And thank you for joining me. See you later.